Recorded Books presents Gradual, The Case for Incremental Change in a Radical Age, by Berman and Aubrey Fox, narrated by Fannon. Introduction. An Era of Radical Change? In October 1787, Alexander Hamilton began work on the Federalist Papers, a masterful series of essays in defense of the U.S. Constitution. Hamilton was writing in a hurry. His main goal was to encourage the New York legislature in its deliberations over whether to ratify the Constitution. And so he began his work in an unlikely place, the cabin of a boat making a journey up the Hudson River from New York to Albany. Federalist No. 1, which would be published only a few short weeks later, is not typically ranked with the most famous of the 85 essays. Yet it deserves to be read closely for its relevance to contemporary debates. To Hamilton, the adoption of the U.S. Constitution was about nothing less than determining whether societies of men are really capable or not of establishing good government from reflection and choice, or whether they are forever destined to depend on accident and force. Hamilton understood that in a vast and diverse country like the United States, it is impossible to reach consensus about each and every political issue, and unwise to resolve arguments by simply letting the side with more power decide. So what is the alternative to government by force? For Hamilton, and fellow founding fathers James Madison and John Jay, who also contributed to the Federalist Papers, a good place to start is by taking humans as they are, as opposed to how we wish they might be. Concepts that are fundamental to American democracy, like limiting government through the separation of powers and building safeguards to prevent the tyranny of the majority, are built on the idea that effective governance must be based on bargaining, compromise, and, perhaps most importantly, deep humility. Hamilton understood that wise and good men were to be found on the wrong as well as on the right side of any given issue. Hamilton was particularly concerned about the potential of political factions to inflame passions and undermine the moderation necessary to govern. He bemoaned the intolerant spirit that characterized political parties, and the torrent of angry and malignant passions that accompany partisan efforts to increase converts by the loudness of their declamations and by the bitterness of their invectives. This book is written in the spirit of Federalist No. 1. We seek to follow Hamilton's lead by making a forceful and unapologetic argument that a gradual and incremental approach to public policy is not only the best way to describe how government actually works, but, almost always, a more effective way of making change happen, even large-scale change. As Hamilton might have predicted, a torrent of angry and malignant passions is a good way to describe our current political moment. Indeed, recent years have been marked by calls for radical change from those on both the right and the left who profoundly distrust the American system of government that has emerged over 2 centuries after the ratification of the U.S. Constitution. On the right, Donald Trump waged a successful presidential campaign in 2016 that was animated primarily by an urge for disruption. Every part of Trump's verbal and nonverbal presentation communicated an opposition to politics as usual. His populist message managed to tap into a deep wellspring of discontent among a segment of the electorate that disdained the power and condescension of American educational, cultural, and economic elites. In a campaign that was light on policy specifics, one of the few promises that Trump made was that he would drain the swamp in Washington, D.C. This kind of rhetoric, repeated consistently over the course of his 4-year presidency, set the stage for the events of January 6, 2021, when a motley crowd
Sample complete. Ready to continue?